Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
Nope. But we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you.
Welcome to the Love Shack with Justin and Abby.
That's so creepy.
Hey.
Oh, hey.
What if we'd actually named it the Love Shack?
The Love Shack.
Because we're like trying
It's
to,
a
get the
little
message of
place
love out
where
there.
We can get
And
together.
You know what? And you think
And we could just say, come
that
be
song,
shacked up with us.
You hear that song? That song that you were singing, you hear that.
Come
and
to the Love Shack.
And you think, oh, it's kind of like.
Become a Love Shack.
Yeah.
Be
Well,
Love Shacked up.
You win. You talk too much. Now I'm done.
No,
I'm done.
so sorry.
I don't want to
Go
talk
ahead.
over you. I'm over you. Why did I marry you? That's what happens in fights. People all of a sudden, like I remember one of my biggest triggers inside of our relationship was being cut off and talked over. And then I'd have this
Wait, what was it?
Deep meltdown.
About me talking while you were talking?
Oh, exactly. It drove me nuts. And it drives me less nuts now. But I know that for a lot of people, it's easy for communication to lead down a very slippery slope until they are throwing plates and screaming and yelling at the top of their lungs.
It's very true.
Because you don't know how to connect and relate with another person because you really don't have any tools to do so.
Oh, yeah. It's a hot mess.
Hot
We had a hot mess when we got married. We didn't know how to communicate. We both had a lot of triggers.
Well, you did.
We both had a lot of craziness that we came into marriage
We did.
with.
And one of the things that I look back in retrospect and I think, I really wish I could have had someone to talk to the entire first year that wasn't you. As in a counselor.
Oh, yeah.
An entire first year of actually going to a counselor and being able to go, I need to talk about how terrible my wife is. And then he could say, you're the one that's terrible. And I could go, what do you mean?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Here's the thing, though. We, so you even just like this year got diagnosed with PTSD. And I think had we seen a counselor in our first year of marriage, you could have been diagnosed with that. It would have changed our marriage.
Just that alone, like me even getting tools early on for
I would
that
have
specifically.
I would have been able to relate to you completely different.
Yeah. There was so much confusion inside of the first couple of years of our marriage because we just didn't understand each other and we didn't have anyone to help put those pieces together outside of us. So we're very much for people in their first year of counseling or their first year of marriage going
their first
That's
year
of
it
counseling.
Should be. Freudian slip. You're like your first year of marriage should be your first year of counseling.
It should be. And the reason that I'm saying this is today we have a couple on here today that we absolutely adore.
One of our favorite couples.
Marcus and Brianna.
Welcome.
Now.
No, let them say hi.
Oh, say hi.
We're so excited to be here.
Love it.
Love it.
Love it.
Love it.
Now that voice of Marcus, some of you have listened to the Father series, and that's where Marcus turned up at.
Yep.
He was in the Father series, and he joined us a couple of years ago on a podcast. When you're happily single?
Happily single, yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I've heard from a lot of people that was their favorite podcast. It's crazy. So crazy.
Yeah. The best one.
And now you're happily married.
Yes, I am happily married.
For an entire year.
A whole year, yeah.
You
a
survived
year and like 2 weeks now. Check that out.
Both of you are still here.
You made it. Okay, so
First year commonly is a train wreck for a lot of people, or it's complete bliss because both
they're ignoring all of the
they're
stuff.
ignoring everything. And they're totally disconnected from themselves. And we want to jump into.
Well, I do think there are people. I don't want to invalidate. There are people who genuinely have a good first year, and it's not denial. They have worked through hard things.
It's true.
Together.
It's true. Yeah.
Okay, but so I want to introduce them, even though we already did.
Quick introduction then,
because I take all credit. But so one of the things I tell people all of the time, me and Justin got to the place of getting healing and wholeness in our marriage, but we had to work through a lot of our issues that we created.
Tons of your issues you created. Yep.
a lot of our issues that we created because we were such a mess when we got married. And so I recommend that everybody do counseling for their first year of marriage. Like premarital is fine if you want to learn, like, should I really marry this person or not? But you're not going to learn lifelong marriage tools and skills in premarital. And that's what you actually need.
Totally.
And so I tell people, ask for a wedding gift, ask people to chip into the counseling fund for your first year. See a counselor before things are bad, create great habits and patterns. Like for us, I remember in our first year.
Because the truth is, it costs way more to get a divorce than it does to just like pay for some counseling in the first year and be really deliberate about setting your life up for success.
And here's the thing. People are willing to go into debt for college.
Or cars.
Or cars, yeah. Things that you will use, but not for that long. Yeah. And so I remember thinking, like, if I would go into debt for college and people get a four-year
college degree.
Thank you. I couldn't remember that word.
Abby didn't fully get her degree, so she didn't know what the word degree meant.
And so, but they're willing to do that to learn something for a career they may or may not use. Why not do something for love that you're meant to have for as long as possible?
Yeah, it's just wise investment.
So Marcus and Brianna met because of me. I am such a good matchmaker.
That's not true. She didn't believe in us as a couple. She was the antidote, but she did not think it would work.
That's true. I did not matchmake you at all.
But here we are.
But yeah, your love survived.
We showed you.
You did. You proved me wrong.
It was really our defiance that brought us together.
Like, oh, really?
That
We're both
woman.
stubborn. I will not be controlled. So they met because they interned for me, and they are awesome and have an amazing, beautiful love story that is unfolding. You're just in the beginning of it. But
and we really wanted to. Recently, we did some conversations about dating and stuff like that. We really wanted to bring a couple in that's been in it for a year. They're out of the dating process. They got into the marriage, and they've done it for a year, and find out like what were some of the troubles or traumas or things that you guys had to overcome, and what felt successful, what didn't, and things like that.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us like a quick, we met and we liked each other, and then start with your stories of what marriage has been like.
Yeah, okay. So like Abby said, we met interning for her, and we took a long time to start dating.
It was a very slow burn.
It was a very slow process. I thought Marcus was kind of cute. He thought I was kind of cute. And then we did nothing about it for like a year straight.
Yep.
That's true. You both were chickens.
We both were chickens, and we both had a lot of fear of marriage and a lot of pain around the idea of committing our heart to someone and being trapped with them for the rest of our lives.
Yeah, you both really did. You were terrified of being
we were
trapped.
so terrified.
It was actually nice for us because if she would have been all in, I'm like, listen, lady, I'm out.
Yeah.
But like her fear and my fear equal.
They were
very
equal.
slow burn for each
Yes.
other, which was nice.
But also, you guys were transforming so much the year that you met. I don't know that you would have worked.
We couldn't have made it work. We were both dealing with so much pain in so many areas that actually stopped us from having healthy relationships that I don't think we could have dated until we sorted through that.
Yeah. That feels real.
I like that. And I like the idea that you guys were already in a process. I think a lot of people before they get married aren't even engaged in a personal process.
Right. Yeah.
They're just going through life like, I'm living another day and I don't know what's going to happen and hopefully I can land me a man or a woman. And then they never put that forethought into it. And so I like that you guys purposely actually surrendered to a season of life to go, I need to get development inside of my journey.
That's so true. And I think that was really helpful for us in marriage when we started, because we both had this common ground of like the core values of we're working through our issues, we're going to counseling, we're working through shame. And we had really common language from Abby on like how to address triggers, how to address undealt with pain. And it actually really set us up for success.
Yeah. Neither of you were like fighting the other person. Like, we need to work through this, or like both of you had, I tell couples, common language really helps things. So when you both are like, hey, I'm feeling shame, you both have explored together what shame means and what that looks like. And so you can understand each other because you have the same language for the same idea.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. So you guys get married. It was like an awesome wedding. We all cried.
Tons of tears.
Lots
We
of
Had some
all
special
cried.
moments. I love
I
being part
literally
of that
wasn't
wedding.
sure if the wedding would start because Abby married us, and the second that Brie got down there, I was sobbing and Brie was sobbing, but then Abby was sobbing, and she's supposed to start the wedding.
Yeah, we're depending
And
on
I'm
her
like,
to
Abby,
run the
you gotta
show.
do something. We're all just sobbing, and they're watching. This is going nowhere.
And he kept looking at me, and I'm like, you picked me to do your wedding.
True.
You know I'm emotional, and you know I love you both so much. So this is your fault.
Yeah.
But there was a while I wasn't sure that the wedding was going to happen either.
Too many emotions.
Yeah.
So after the wedding that seemingly drug on, what did you guys do? Honeymoon? Yeah. Where'd you go? What happened? Tell us a little bit
Yes,
about
after that we went on a honeymoon. We did one of those package all-inclusive resorts in
Ooh,
the DR.
Never-ending
It was very
drinks and
classy.
food. Yay!
So real. Also, to clarify, the DR, we did not go to like the Congo for a honeymoon. We were not trying to like live the missionary like hole in the wall,
In
people
the war
dying in the
zone.
streets, war zone. We went to the
Not that.
Caribbean and laid on the beach.
And
Yeah,
it
good.
was magical.
Oh, I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so you guys have a honeymoon story that I'm going to ask you to share because I've worked with couples for years who have honeymoon stories kind of around this concept
Early marriage stories, yeah.
that literally broke and shut them down forever, and you guys handled it like champs. And so why don't you guys share about your honeymoon?
Yeah. So, as I said, we went to the Caribbean. And in case you didn't know, like, culture's a little bit different there than America. And so we're like at this all-inclusive thing. And so they have this like theater on site. And at the theater, they have different shows. So one night we're like, oh, we're doing nothing. Let's go to the show. And I can't remember what it was called, but it was like supposed to be some like dance
Some sort of
drama
dance show. It sounded like so much fun.
Yeah.
And we get there, and it's this coliseum, so we're sitting in the middle, so it's not like you can easily leave. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, people are coming out, like, and the girls are wearing the, like, pants with no butts in them, and it's like all this stuff, and the guys are wearing like these crotch pants, and I'm like, oh no.
Yeah,
It's
the
like
guys had
Thunder
like
Down
orange
Under
slicked
from
on their
Vegas.
chests, and the girls were just in their
see-through shirts that are
underwear.
sticking to your glistening like oil body, and I was like, what did we show up to? I think that we're at like a burlesque show.
It was like a burlesque,
hysterical.
sexy
Stripper.
scandal show. Yeah, stripper show. And we're
not
just
quite
trapped.
stripper, but like you're like I see more than I normally see on people
on
stage.
everybody.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
it felt very sexual.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden, it's like there is
Perfect
this,
honeymoon moment, right?
Yeah.
yeah, perfect.
Uh-huh.
Like me
Totally.
and my wife watching the striptease. What a treat. But I'm sitting there.
What a
and
treat.
I feel this immediate like magnetic pull to the people on stage.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh no.
Because
Because I have my own like history of working through sexuality shame and fears around it and having control issues there because of stuff that happened growing up. And I'm immediately like, oh no. I'm bad. Look at me go. I'm on my honeymoon and I'm being magnetically pulled toward these crazy, like burlesque people on stage. And so I can feel myself shutting down the whole entire show.
Oh.
And so then the show is over. Did
And
we leave early?
I think we actually
we might
did
have
leave
left early because we're like,
'cause
this is getting
it was
so
just
weird.
not our thing. But afterwards, I think it was the next
First,
morning.
the women and children left. Like you're sitting there, all of a sudden, all the children are leaving with their moms. You're like, see, that is a sign that this is not the show.
Not
I want
family
to be at."
appropriate.
That's
all.
funny.
Yes. So we watched the show. I didn't really have a huge effect from it. I just thought like, wow, that was sexual and a little uncomfortable. But afterwards, I totally forgot about it. We're on to the next thing. And then the next morning at breakfast, Marcus was kind of like quiet and I could tell he had something going on.
Was it at breakfast?
I think so.
Okay, it may or may not have been at breakfast. But I was like, babe, I need to share this with you. I felt so much shame yesterday because during that like sexcapade, I could feel the pull internally. And now when I say that, it's not like I wasn't
So
like
you're getting kind of horned up or what?
no, it wasn't like I wasn't feeling lustful. It wasn't like I'm imagining having sex with them.
Yeah.
It was just I felt this internal pull towards their sexuality.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like I didn't have a boner. It wasn't like I was like a raging hormone man. It
But
was just
even
I felt
if
this
you
emotional
did,
pull.
that
Yeah.
would be okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Even
I
if
mean,
I did,
it
it
would
would.
look a little awkward
But like
trying to
I'm
walk out, but
giving you
whatever.
context for how like my internal feelings.
Right.
That's where I was at. And so I started describing it to her, and she's literally like, "Oh yeah, I think everyone in the room felt sexually pulled." And I was like, what? It wasn't just me. It was everyone in the room.
Yeah, which I think for me, like, it's a really helpful thing to have gone through the journey of like figuring out what our triggers are and where our pain is at. Because I, ahead of time going into marriage, I knew Marcus has a lot of shame and a lot of triggers around sexuality. And it's an area that's actually felt painful for him in the past, that he's had to work a lot through, and I know that he can get triggered there and feel like overwhelmed by it. And so for me, it was really helpful because I had this understanding already. I was able to see like I was able to see, okay, this isn't about me. You having these feelings towards these dancers, this feeling of pull towards them, it doesn't mean you're not telling me that I'm not attractive. You're not telling me that I'm not enough or that you're not enjoying sex with me. Literally, you are being triggered in an area where you already have pain. So for me, it was really helpful because I was able to be with him in that and not shut down and spiral and go off into my own area. I was able to be like, oh, I'm so sorry. I know that you have a lot of pain there. I don't think that it was a big deal that you felt sexually pulled. I kind of felt sexually pulled towards them too because there was a lot of skin in that show. And
I feel like a lot of people do spiral.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people are like, oh my God, is this about me? Am I not enough? They hit that like over and over again internally of like, what does this mean about our future? Horrible things are happening.
Yeah. And I think like part of understanding triggers, what's so helpful is that I was able to see like his pain goes beyond this situation. So if I didn't have that sort of understanding, it would be so easy to think, this is about me. We're never going to make it. Our marriage is crumbling. But with triggers,
day 3, our marriage is over.
Yeah, day 3, 3 days in. But because I had this like base understanding of triggers are pain that is traced back further to like all the way back to his childhood, I could see like this pain and this shame is not about me. Actually, this is an area where I get to show up and love him, where I get to have compassion and be with him in the middle of his pain. And so it actually was a really connecting conversation for us.
It became a place where we felt bonded, where I felt safe to be honest and open. And I think we actually had sex afterwards because we felt so connected.
Yeah, we got real turned on.
Connection turns you on.
One thing that I want to input in here is during the journey of being in internship with Abby, there's a strong environment stewarded of openness and honesty and not hiding, which it feels like came into play. I mean, it's not that it wasn't difficult for you to have that conversation with Bree, but there was already a culture that you guys have been part of. Like, we just talk about what's going on inside. It's not a high stakes thing, and we'll just investigate.
Yeah, there was a culture that you guys had been in for, I don't know if it was 1 or 2 years when you guys got married.
2 years.
2 years.
2 years. Where everybody was being required to share all the things.
Yeah. So to give us a history of trust with each other.
Yeah.
That we're going to be honest and open. That it's not like us attacking the other person. It's just I'm sharing my feelings, which I even learned a lot from Bree because I think this is sometimes harder for guys, not always, but it's less normal to share that kind of stuff because girls grow up sharing with their friends.
Yeah, for girls it's more expected.
Oh my gosh,
That's
but guys
true.
don't do that as much.
Yeah.
So I will literally be like, I need to word vomit my feelings, and I'll just share things even though I haven't figured it out or had the answers yet. And it built trust that those kind of conversations lead to connection, not to sabotage.
Oh, yeah. That's very true. Because you guys had learned to love people so the great thing is you started hearing about each other's triggers before they were aimed at each other.
Yeah.
So you actually you really could understand this trigger is not about me. So you actually heard about his sexuality triggers probably before you were
probably
dating.
like 2 years before we were dating, and I already knew that was an area where he had shame.
Right.
So
and
it had nothing to do with me.
Not about me. This is about him. And I wish every couple could understand that because everybody comes in with triggers that has nothing to do with their spouse.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then you were good at covering each other in the middle of sharing vulnerably. How did you guys learn to do that? Or what was that like for you?
What does it look like to be covered in sharing that?
So you share something that's vulnerable. How does your partner respond, or how do you respond when they share something that's vulnerable?
I think a big value that we both have is in understanding and hearing the other person when they share, even if I can't fix his problem, I can't like fully relate in my own terms, I could actually, like, my goal when he shares something is for him to feel heard, for him to feel like someone was compassionate and someone was kind to him, and to feel like soft with him in his vulnerable moments. So for me, even if he shares something and it feels like kind of crazy or kind of, I don't know, messy, my goal is always like, how can I just hear him in this? And
Huge.
How can I be compassionate towards him? Because I know it takes a lot of vulnerability and a lot of guts to share something, especially something like on our honeymoon, I'm pulled towards other dancers on a stage. I could honor like, oh, that must have been really scary for you to tell me.
So you used empathy. You thought, what is it like for him to have to be telling me this?
Yeah. And he must care about our relationship so much to tell me something that could cause such a huge mess because he wants to be fully known. So I could feel really loved by that.
So that is part of blame-free communication, which we're doing this as an addition to Laura talked about on the podcast about blame-free communication. And part of what you're saying is you were believing the best about his intentions and telling you that.
Yeah, that's true.
How did you, was that naturally your personality to do that, or?
I do think that is naturally how I see things. I definitely, my goal is always to understand the other person. But I think that learning blame-free communication has helped me a lot in that, where I've learned a lot through counseling that, that a lot of times our pain runs deeper than the situation. And so because I have that understanding of like, oh, this could be deeper, this could be about something totally different, then I naturally am able to empathize more because I can see beyond whatever the circumstances are.
So you're saying like when he's processing his triggers with me, I'm aware it's probably not all about me.
Yeah, exactly. And then I'm able to get outside of my head and connect with him more because I'm not stuck in my head dealing with all my own insecurities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Going back really quick, Marcus, and so was that scary?
You know, I mean, it wasn't like, this is the dream time to do this. So I don't think it was like super fun, but I don't think that I felt like World War II was coming in this moment.
Because we had a history.
Yeah, I think that we had built history. I remember getting married and thinking one of my favorite parts about marriage is that there is a settling in my soul that love doesn't get removed. Like, because also, like, your commitment is we're in this forever. And so a lot of my fear was abandonment or love getting removed. And then to realize, oh, there's someone signing up to not remove love. Now, not that you don't ever get triggered or there's not like, I need space. But like the holistic idea of marriage is, I am here for you.
Yeah.
And
we're
so
committed
I think
to
that
loving
creates
each other.
a level of security in your soul to know that that's what someone's buying into.
Right. Well, so how did it feel for you how she responded?
Oh, it was dreamy. I thought, this is the best. Finally. This is what I've been looking for my whole life, but I had no language or understanding of how to build it.
Yeah.
That's how I felt internally.
I love that. It's a beautiful story because, like I said, most people in their honeymoon, both people are feeling so vulnerable and they don't have common language to understand. Like, your shame is about you, not about me. And most of the beginning of marriage is people are trying to negotiate that their needs will get met and that they're worthy of love.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
And rather than the foundation of, I am here, especially in the beginning of this, my foundation is I want to seek to understand this person. I want to grow an understanding of them. And so when we're not busy being scared of rejection and being thrown away and we're choosing to just trust the process, we can begin to do that and just actually make a focus not just on self, but a focus on someone else where we look out and go, I want to love you well. I want to understand you. Let's go on this journey.
And I think, I was going to say, I think both of us had an understanding, like, I think a lot of times people's goal is, how do I avoid triggers in marriage? Like, what do we do so that triggers don't happen?
Right.
Whereas we both have an understanding, because we're humans, we have pain, and because pain exists, triggers happen. So it's not, like, triggers aren't monsters trying to run our lives. They're invitations to process so that we can get to wholeness.
And we both had a view that triggers aren't bad. Having pain come up isn't bad. We both have a big value for pain and for facing it. So I think that...
Why do you have a value for pain and facing it?
I think because we've both seen that... when you avoid pain, it actually limits your life and your lifestyle, and you just start to shut down more and more parts of your heart until eventually you feel numb. And when you face pain and process through it, and especially when you get love and compassion in the middle of it, that actually like opens you up to feel so much more free and so much more full and vibrant. So we both have this this really high value of anything that's going to spark pain, spark a trigger, some undealt with area in my life. We both are like, yeah, 100% we're going to face this. We're running after it as fast as we can.
And also, I think people always are like, it's so crazy. I don't know what happened. Out of nowhere, this person, like, we feel like we're fighting all the time. And I always think, like, that's what marriage does. And even in your good friendships, you can still have your protector walls up.
Yeah.
But the idea of marriage is both of our goal is to let our walls down that have been protecting us our entire lives.
Oh my gosh.
So I kind of have an expectation that's going to be messy.
Totally.
The protectors we've been using our
vulnerable.
whole lives, we're trying to let down because the goal of marriage is connection.
Yes.
And so that's going to cause a lot of stuff to happen.
Absolutely. I agree. Okay, so you guys get married and you start seeing a counselor, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And you really work on owning your own stuff in your marriage. Tell us some stories and like your heart towards that, and just tell us what it's been like.
I mean, honestly, it's been an absolute game changer for us. I think like for me, as much of a good, calm communicator I thought I was going into marriage, I still have a huge tendency to blame my feelings on my circumstances or on other people, to be
As
like,
do most
you
humans.
made me feel this way.
Yes.
And that's actually like really easy for me to get there. So we started meeting with a counselor, and she like talked us all through what it looks like to have blame-free communication, in that even if you're communicating calmly, if you're saying something along the lines of like, you doing this made me feel all this pain, that is actually telling them like, it's your fault that I feel this way. And so for me, a big area of recognizing that was this is just one example, like in our dating relationship and early on in our marriage, I would feel really shut down and really rejected if Marcus didn't feel like he was listening to me while I talked.
Oh, yeah.
And
I think lots of people feel that way with their partner.
The thing is, I married this amazing man who happens to have ADD. And
So true.
His head's all over the place.
Which is not
looking
the
all
best helper
directions.
for listening.
He is looking
He's
in all
a
the
fidgeter.
directions. He's fidgeting with everything around.
he's looking everywhere. His hands are moving.
Yes.
He's just trying so hard to sit still.
Yeah.
And
It's like the win is that he's still sitting.
yeah, he's actually trying so hard.
Yes.
But I would be like trying to process my day or these feelings I've had come up, and he would just be like fidgeting and all over the place.
Honestly, in my head, I'm normally like, look at those eyes. Pay attention. Smile. If you smile, it means you're focusing. So I'm like, all my mental energy is just,
You are trying
stay
so
here.
hard.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's trying so hard. But I would, over and over again, I would feel so shut down. And I would leave those conversations and feel like, Marcus doesn't care about me. What I'm saying isn't valuable. He's rejecting me. He's telling me that what I'm saying isn't important. And I had this huge like story of accusation against him. And I even confronted him like a couple times, which I thought went pretty well. I was like, hey, listen, when you do this, I feel really rejected and I feel really hurt. And I guess that was like a surface level confrontation of like letting him know, hey, this doesn't feel great.
Yeah.
But actually, I had all these deep triggers that went so far beyond that situation that were coming up about
Which
it.
is a good start. Like,
Yeah,
hey,
it's a good
I know
start.
that I'm feeling
and having
really
feelings.
angry and frustrated when you're picking your nose and you're playing with something over here and not listening fully to me. And obviously, at least that's a start, because a lot of people, I just want to interject into this, a lot of people don't even get that far.
Totally.
Yeah, that's so true.
They just shut it internally, and then all of a sudden,
They explode.
why are you yelling and screaming over me leaving up the toilet seat?
Totally.
Yeah.
You know?
Or like they just like ignore. And then one day like Marcus is fidgeting like all the other days and they're like, you're the worst.
That's so true. And I think like there's totally a place for confronting people about little things that are actually hurting you. And I have a huge value for that. But what I realized is my emotions about the situation were so much higher than the actual
Yes.
situation.
Level 10 for a level 2.
So I could see logically, I know this guy has ADD. I know he's
Totally.
trying. It would make sense if I'm like a level 2 annoyed that he's not paying attention. But I'm level 10 like he hates me. And I'm pretty sure that he doesn't care about anything I'm saying. And so what I learned going through counseling is to actually like take a look at my emotions when they're bigger than whatever the situation is. Because if I'm at a level 10 and it's a level 2 situation, I'm probably being triggered from some past pain.
And as long as this is about them and it isn't about me, I can't actually get freedom from that. I'm going to have that same feeling a million times over, not just with him, but a million other people.
Exactly.
So the minute we have high intense emotions and we start creating a culture in our own soul that says, when I have a level 10 emotion, I'm going to start asking, what does this say about me? What does this have to do with me?
Where is this actually coming from?
Sometimes, so for me, often it's easy when it feels illogical. So if it's like a crazy thing and I have emotions, oh, there's a trigger.
Totally.
But sometimes it feels justified. Like, oh, you did this thing. And that actually does suck. It does suck when you can't focus. So because it's justified, you don't actually validate the pain inside in that scenario because it feels like there's a real thing in this situation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I was like, it's awesome that you knew you were having a level 10 about a level 2 thing, but lots of people in marriage are like, no, your fidgeting is a level 10 offense. And that's why I have level 10 emotions.
The fidgeting could be like screaming at the top of their lungs. You have a spouse, maybe your wife is screaming at the top of her lungs, and that could be a level 10 offense, especially if that's the normal of just screaming at the top of your lungs and cussing at each other. That's not okay. But the fact that I feel so powerless and out of control, and why can I not be at peace? Because I know some people, if you have someone who's screaming with a level 10 emotions in a house, some people are like, they're insane and out of control. This isn't fun, but you're like, you're chill and you're like, you need to go calm down. You're acting like a 2-year-old, and you just walk off. Like there's no intensity in your own soul or hook in your own soul being on the other end of that. And so when there is something that, you use the word hook. And do you want to just explain the word hook maybe?
Yeah. Well, I was just saying, like, there's something, part of your pain. So I always kind of imagine it like you have like a river of pain inside of you. And from your childhood, from past beliefs, from past experiences, and something about what you just did, like, hooked into that river of pain for me.
Right.
And grabbed it. So now the river of pain is up and it is showcasing. And so now I think the river of pain is from your behavior that I felt hooked it. But actually, if I didn't have a river of pain, your behavior could just be like, okay, well, that's...
And even say my level 10, if there is a level 10 action that's expressed at some point, I
can just set boundaries and move on.
Yeah, you'd be like, hey, that's really disrespectful. I don't do yelling and cussing at me.
Yep.
So I'm going to go in the other room. If you want to be close and connected to me, I'm going to need you to probably come back around and apologize, and then let me know what's actually going on besides your intensity.
So, okay, so you are aware of this, or you became aware of this.
I became aware of it, yeah.
And so what did you realize was happening in you when he was fidgeting?
Yeah, so I realized that actually feeling rejected is a pain that I've carried with me my whole life. Wow. Like, I was a really shy little kid. I didn't have a lot of friends. I always felt like I don't know what to say to people. I don't think I'm enough with people. If people aren't listening while I'm talking, it's probably because I'm not interesting. I'm not enough. And so literally throughout my whole life, I've told myself this story, and it's like little situations could trigger it and prove that this story was true to me.
Right.
So when Marcus wouldn't listen to me, all of a sudden I have these level 10 feelings of like, the story is true. I am rejectable. No one does care about me. I'm not enough. And I had all of this emotion about it. And the crazy thing is, like, before, when I had just confronted Marcus saying like, hey, you need to listen to me more, I feel hurt, it actually hadn't met that deep part of my heart that needed compassion and needed healing. And Marcus wasn't able to meet that part because I didn't realize like where the pain was actually coming from.
So it's like asking him to put a Band-Aid over something, but that never getting healed.
Exactly.
Like, I want your behavior to fix my pain, but I'm not even letting you get, like, we're not even at what the real pain is.
Yeah, so it never did anything.
I did become more intentional. Like, okay, I'm going to work. I was working really hard at it.
Yeah.
But I could work as hard as I want until her rejection pain or the place of feeling like I'm not valuable isn't met in the place of pain inside of her.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much I show up.
So,
it's going to show up over and over again.
Definitely. If he has one slip up, I'll be like, I knew it was true. I'm not valuable.
This is so true.
And so basically I had to get to that point where I realized where the pain was actually coming from. And then I could communicate that to Marcus and be like, oh, Marcus, I realized that I have all of this pain because actually when I was a kid, I never felt like I was enough. And I always felt like people wouldn't listen to me. And then he was actually able to connect with me in that place because what hearing the root of my pain was, like, that connected him to me, where he was like, oh, that is really sad. I'm really sorry that you went through that.
Well, it's a vulnerable style of communication.
Yeah.
It's not walls up, and it's not you're all my problem. Mm-hmm. It's, oh, here I am, and here's the scary places, and it becomes an invitation.
Yeah, and it allows me to meet her where she's at. The other communication style just gives me room to be better. Like, it's like, okay,
more.
yeah, if you can do this better, then I'll be okay.
Yeah.
If it's, I actually feel like I don't matter, I feel insignificant, I feel like no one cares about my voice, I can show up there every time.
Right.
Because it's not about me fixing my behavior for her to be okay.
Yeah.
I can always show up and tell her, babe, I think it really matters that you felt insecure. I would never want you to feel like I don't care. Even if I actually think I was trying really hard.
Yeah.
I can still show up there because she's inviting me into a pain emotion, not telling me to do this thing so she's better.
Mm-hmm.
And so then not only are you telling him this is the trigger, but then you're working through that for yourself, right?
Yeah. So I did a lot of like my own healing, even apart from Marcus in that area, where I realized, like, when I was a little kid, I disowned myself. Like, I thought that all the other kids rejecting me meant that I wasn't good enough. And so I decided, like, they must be right. I'm going to reject myself. So I grew up feeling like I'm not enough. I need to prove that I'm enough. And so for me, a lot of it looked like going back to those moments in my mind where I was a little kid and felt so rejected, and actually validating that little girl and being like, oh, little Brianna, I'm so sorry I disowned you. I'm so sorry I told you you weren't enough. I actually think you're so fun and creative and full of life, and I actually want to be on your team. So I had to go on my own healing journey of learning to love myself in those areas where I had been really rejected. And that actually brought the healing and the wholeness that I needed to not be, well, triggered every single time Marcus couldn't look me in the eye or pay full attention.
And self-nurturing and self-care in that way, like actually addressing yourself, is one of the most powerful ways to get settled inside a relationship.
And this
because somebody else isn't our source of love or
Marcus
value.
couldn't fix my pain.
Yeah, he can't. Yeah.
And that's a really huge problem in marriages, is we come to marriage wanting the partner to silence our lovability questions. Am I lovable? Do I have worth? Am I enough? We want someone else to love us so much that kindergarten Brianna no longer feels ashamed, and that middle school Brianna no longer feels ugly, or, so that's what most people go into marriage with, the idea is if you love me enough, then it will silence my rejection. It will silence my self-hatred. It will silence. And so then we have our partner who is put in a battle they can never win.
No.
Totally.
And then you become hopeless.
Yeah, I think this is helpful for me because otherwise I would feel like I'm never good enough. Which is, like, it's funny in marriage, or any relationship that you're really committed to, their triggers will push your triggers.
Totally.
So one of her big triggers is like, oh, someone will never meet my needs. I'll never be fulfilled in a relationship. And then my big trigger is I'll never be enough in relationship. So like they perfectly met. So she'd be like, you didn't do this thing. And I'm like, I'm trying so hard. You don't see how hard I'm trying. And we would like go rounds. But then when you are able to take care of your own trigger, then it's like, okay, I can hear that you feel abandoned. At the same time, I know that it's my trigger that feels like I'm not good enough. Because if that place was met and I was okay with me, then if you said, oh my gosh, I felt really sad because I felt unheard. Okay, great. Let's talk about it.
Totally.
It's my trigger that says, you're saying I'm not good enough here. And if I can take care of that, then I can actually show up for you.
And basically what you just said is both of you, that one of the number one things is shame. And so it'd be easy for you to both see the other person's behavior is a reflection that you're not good enough.
Yeah.
That you're not lovable. And so you guys are taking your power back, which is like the other person is not my source of if I love me or not. And I'm aware of my own issues enough to work through my part.
Totally. Literally this is like right before we got engaged, Bria was really working through these deep fears of, oh my gosh, if I get married, I'm going to be trapped.
That's
Like, that was
real.
her deepest fear.
I had
If
to
I
work
get
through that
married,
Can't get out.
trapped forever.
Been stuck here 11 years now. I ain't going nowhere.
because she had been told a lot of stories
I know.
about women who married men, and then they talk
Oh,
about
yeah.
how their husbands are the reason their lives are horrible,
Yeah.
and we're stuck, and I'll never be happy because he comes home and doesn't connect to me. It's like her background story in her head is, I'll get married, and if it's not the perfect person, I'll end up in a horrible marriage, and I'm trapped.
and my whole life will be ruined.
Yeah.
And I grew up with that idea too. It's a very powerless mentality. There's nothing I can do to change my life or to become what I want or to create what I want.
Yeah.
It's just going to happen to me if it's the wrong person.
Yeah.
Which is a side note I just want to add. I think that culturally, the reason that people are adverse, especially nowadays, adverse to marriage, is that powerless life.
Yep.
Like, I saw that it didn't work out for my parents. They eventually ended in divorce anyways. Marriage is is like a trap you go to die in. And
Totally.
and so as we begin to teach and create a world and a culture of people who are powerful and able to actually manage themselves, marriage can become really incredibly appealing on those terms.
Yeah.
Totally. But in that process, so it's like the day I'm asking her dad if I can ask his daughter to marry me. So this is like a big day, right? You're like, yes, finally. I am pretty sure I want to marry this person so much.
I'm
asking
pretty
their
sure.
dad.
100% sure. I hope.
I'm sure enough that I will ask her dad. And so then I ask him, and it's this like fun thing and like odd and weird because you like kind of know their parents, not really.
Totally.
And then later that day, I tell Bree, and it's like internal. I'm like, yes, this is gonna be so fun, and immediate like silence, and then sobbing. And I'm like, what the f? This is not what you want to happen,
right.
And so this is like probably the fourth time we'd had this experience, and it's because of her fear of being trapped.
I had so much fear about marriage and this idea of if I make the wrong decision, if I pick the wrong person, my whole life is screwed, basically.
Right.
And so naturally, marriage felt like the scariest possible option for me, and I had a ton of anxiety about it.
Oh, trying to
And
make that decision
Yeah.
would feel overwhelming.
Overwhelming.
How will I know
Yep.
the right person
And
who
then-
won't ruin my life?
And then I had this thought, like every time I feel anxiety about the decision, I'm like, oh, is my anxiety because Marcus isn't the right person?
Right.
And if I was with the right person, would I feel no
Would
anxiety?
the anxiety go away?
Yeah,
Would I
would I
have so
feel
much peace?
perfect peace? And so I totally am just freaking out about it. He tells me he asked my dad if he could marry me, and all I felt was just anxiety. Like,
trapped!
oh God, now it's official. I can't get out. I'm trapped forever. And basically I had a sobbing meltdown.
But so this is like the fourth time it happened.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
first time I was like, screw this, I don't like her either. Because of my trigger of feeling like I'm never good enough. Like I grew up feeling like I can't be enough to make my mom happy, to make my dad happy. There's no way I'm doing it again.
Right.
Like, I'm not
gonna
signing up
be
for
married.
round two
Round two.
of never being enough for someone.
Right.
But because
So
this
the
is-
first time you walked away feeling triggered.
yeah, I was angry. I was pissed. I felt let down. I felt like I'm not good enough. But then I talked to Jesse and he was like, do you think maybe this is about your mom? I'm like, no, it's not my mom. It's because she freaked out. But I was like, yes, it is actually from the place of feeling, the years of feeling like I'm not good enough.
Right.
So by this time, I actually had realized, oh, this is actually because
I have a trigger here.
Yeah, my trigger. And this is because of her trigger.
Yep.
So because of that, like I didn't have a huge meltdown here. It was still like, this is annoying. Like it was like a
Totally.
level to like, this is not what you want.
Right. I wanted
on
to
the day.
celebrate.
Yeah. But it didn't crush my world.
Yeah.
And
And
I
you
knew,
didn't have a huge reaction.
Yeah. In the reaction I did have, I knew this is actually because of my own pain and I can deal with this. So I told her, I'm going to go outside and work through my stuff. You should call Abby. And that's how that went.
Which was very helpful.
Yeah.
And I did call Abby, and she gave me like a good butt kicking and told me, your fear is not about Marcus. You could break up with him if you want, but you're going to have this fear come up in the next relationship too, because this is actually about your childhood, about seeing broken marriages, about carrying this really high stakes idea into marriage that your choice is going to dictate whether you live a full, happy life or not. So she helped me to get beyond the circumstances.
To see that it was your trigger,
Yes.
not the person.
Because
Great
in the moment,
pushback, Abs.
in the moment, I thought this anxiety is because Marcus is the wrong person.
Totally.
It must be.
I have a lot of people do that too, where
Yeah.
all of a sudden they're in total trigger mode in an intimate relationship, and they're like, "I'm clearly not with the right one," right? Because all the fluffiness and the happy butterflies all disappeared out of my soul. I'm like, probably not. That's probably not a good indicator.
Right. And here's the truth though. I do want to validate. I had relationships where I didn't feel I was missing peace. I was missing something, and it was a good part of my guide. It was separate from fear, and I had to work through that process of determining fear versus my trigger of like fear of commitment versus an actual this is not right.
Right.
But when I was helping you, I knew her fear was that Marcus wasn't going to be able to meet her needs, and I knew you both well, and I was like, Marcus is one of the most generous with love humans I know. I have zero fear that whoever he marries will have their needs not get met. So I could actually say I knew that it was a trigger, not who he was.
That's true. And I think too, even to that point, like we had a really amazing relationship and there wasn't really anything missing. So it wasn't like, oh, he's not meeting
about
this
it. Thank you for
huge
telling
need
me that
for me.
now.
Yeah.
I would have liked that back then.
Yeah, it's not like I had this miserable relationship
Right.
and felt anxiety. It was like sometimes Abby would ask me like, okay, you're saying you feel anxiety. What is it about? And I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I would be like, oh, it's just this deep feeling that something's not right.
Is there something that he can't love you in, or that you don't feel connected in?
Yes.
Or
So for me, it really was just a trigger. It wasn't any logical circumstance that I could look at and be like, oh, this isn't meeting my need.
right.
Yeah.
But on my end, for that, because I knew my trigger and I had been meeting it and getting compassion to the place of feeling not enough. There's actually a season after that, like a whole process where I was able to lead her and love her and show up because I wasn't reacting out of my trigger. So there were multiple times where I would hold her and she would cry, and I was able to show up and love her because my trigger of I'm not enough wasn't running my experience, because I had been processing through and meeting the place of feeling I'm not enough and going back and like imagining holding myself as a kid and imagining getting compassion to that kid. And because I was able to own my trigger in the middle of her being messy in a season, I was able to love her because that place was met inside of me.
Which is so huge. And it was really fun to watch because she could be having anxiety, and instead of you being like, well, then I don't know what I think about you. Like, and that's what typical happens in relationships is one person's trigger triggers the other person, triggers the other person, and it's just a trigger cycle.
This has become a drinking game, saying the word triggers. They're like, we're getting trashed on this end, just drinking every time they say trigger.
But so, because exactly what you're saying, when you owned you and you went to not, I need Brianna to heal this part in me, but I'm going to run after getting truth and loving and myself and working out this issue. I'm processing it with people like Justin and other people in my life. Now I have generosity to give to you. So I remember she'd be able to freak out and you could just love her and let her freak out and give her permission, because her freak out, you were aware, was not about you.
And it was even nice just because he had connected with himself and was dealing with his own pain there. I actually felt the freedom to let my triggers and my pain and my anxiety come up and to process through it and to like really go after getting healing in that area. Whereas if he was freaking out every single time I talked to him about it, it would be so much more tempting to just shut down that part of my heart, to wall off, to be like, he's not safe to tell this stuff to. And so I was actually able to like really explore what was going on in me because he created a really safe place for me to do that.
I love that.
So one thing I've seen you guys grow in, speaking of this story, before you got married, I think you didn't recognize that things were as much about you, Brianna.
For sure.
Like you thought it was Marcus causing you to feel things.
Absolutely, I did.
Yes. And now I
What
feel
a
like
treat.
Everything was his
treat
fault
for
back
me.
then.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that creates a crazy marriage if you would live that way forever.
Uh-huh.
Because then you're constantly going to be blamed anytime a bad emotion comes up in you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what do you think helped you learn to not do that?
Oh, man. I think... Goodness. I mean, honestly, consistent counseling and having someone tell me week after week, this isn't
you.
about the situation. It takes a while to learn a new system of thinking.
Yeah.
And so I grew up my whole life putting my emotions on my circumstances. So that just felt normal.
Yeah.
And I had to actually go through this process of learning a new way to think and learning to get curious about my emotions and figure out where they're actually coming from. Because I think it's so easy, if you've never done that before, to assume that your day-to-day situations are causing your pain. And so I had to literally practice it over and over again, have someone call me out week after week saying, Brianna, this isn't about Marcus. Brianna, this isn't about your job. This isn't about whatever crazy thing was going on. And finally, I just got ingrained to me where when I feel those sort of emotions, my first instinct is to be like, well, what's really going on? My first instinct is to get curious and to think, where have I felt this feeling before? Where have I experienced this? What do I think is actually going on in my heart? And now that's become a place where it feels more normal to do that than to blame the situation.
Yeah, you can retrain your mind and emotions and how you hold them.
And that's actually the only powerful way to live, because otherwise the only way to live is I have to manage perfectly all of my circumstances so I can be okay. So either I am the best at control and I have anxiety all the time, or I realize this is not about the circumstance, this is about me, and I can own that every time and get healing there and freedom there and love there so that my life is something that I want to be a part of.
And it feels so much more hopeful because you actually always know that you can change something then.
Totally.
Because you can't change Marcus's behavior and you can't change Brianna's emotions, but you can change your trigger and your pain and what's happening inside of you. So let's pick, do you guys have one last story illustrating like blame-free or anything else you want to share about it?
Another area that we have both actually had different triggers come up is money, which is kind of funny. It's interesting that everyone actually has their own money story.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not actually about how much money you come from, because we're both, we like grew up pretty like similar, upper middle class, like pretty normal, but we both had a lot of fear and control around finances.
Yeah. And it's very funny because when you're single and you manage all your own money, like you just don't realize you have control or fear problems there.
Oh, totally.
But then you marry this person, you combine your finances with them, all of a sudden you're out of control.
Yes.
The way they spend affects you. And I think both of us had huge like control fear buttons come up. And I, for one, felt like massively out of control, massively afraid that Marcus was going to spend away all of our savings, even though he's pretty responsible.
Which is funny, like, so we both grew up similar, but like, we both did the school out here, and when I was in school, I was like working part-time and like kind of surviving, you know, because I came straight from college, so college you have no money, and then you're in more school, so you have no money.
Yeah.
But she was in school and had worked like a job that was like a real job. Yeah. Now that other jobs aren't real, but like when we were making
she was making
real money.
good, decent money.
And so when we get together, I'm like, oh, this is more money I've ever had in my bank account.
Totally.
And she is like freaking out because she's went on this journey with God where she didn't work. So she had less money than ever before.
Yep. Yeah, when we got married, I quit my job, and so I went from making great money, feeling totally fine, like I had my savings account, I was great, to all of a sudden feeling massively out of control. I have nothing. We're just spending. I don't have my little cushion of money that makes me feel safe.
Right.
And I think like a month into our marriage or so, we went on a vacation to Seattle and
to visit her family.
Yeah, to visit my family. And I think we were just doing normal vacation spending, like, you know, going out to dinner a couple times, eating, like going to lots of coffee shops, maybe buying a few things.
It was like kind of normal. Like, it wasn't outlandish. It's not like we're like,
just
let's
normal
go buy a
vacation
new
spending.
wardrobe.
Totally.
Like, Seattle, why not buy a car? Like, it was just like normal life spending.
That's what you do in Seattle. You buy cars there.
Yeah.
People do that. Some do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we both actually had huge triggers come up. I think yours was first.
Well, mine was a little bit before this, but we were married, but we hadn't, I think we were just like, you get married and then you're figuring out how do we combine finances and stuff. And then we hadn't combined it yet. And I was trying to figure out, my budget's only for one person, but now we're married. So I'm like, babe, now we're still so can you buy this thing? And I was like, I'm not gonna tell my wife to buy her own dinner because our budget isn't for two people yet. And logically, the logic would say, no, just pay for both and deal with it when you get back. But
Totally.
I was like, no, my budget's for one person.
Yeah, so his budgets were just failing in every way.
Totally. And failure is like you're a 3
so I have a
on
huge
the
fail
Enneagram.
button. So it was like, I'm trying so hard and I'm failing. And I felt so out of control. Like, what do I do here? There's no answer that I win.
There's no win.
And so at this point, we had at least learned good language. I was like, babe, I don't have an answer to my trigger yet, but I can tell I'm shutting down because I'm feeling out of control with money.
Yeah.
So I didn't know all the roots yet. I didn't like have all the answers, but we were able to stay connected because I had language to let her know this isn't about you. Like, I'm not mad at you. I'm not wanting to disconnect from you. I can feel the triggers from money coming up, and it's shutting me down more than normal. And I can't get out of it because you can't stop spending money. Like, it wasn't like, oh, we're frustrated with her dad. Let's just not go to the house. It's like, oh, you can't not spend money for a week in Seattle. That's impossible. So like every time it would happen, like, no, coffee again. How is this possible?
But again, the beautiful thing that you're saying is I'm taking ownership that this is in me. This is not actually about your behavior.
Yeah. So I think that's like an example where if we didn't have that language, it could have been a huge issue.
Yeah,
I could have shut down, disconnected. She didn't know why.
And she could have felt abandoned, alone.
It's the first time seeing her parents since we got married. So like it could have been this huge mess that felt really painful.
Yeah.
But because we had an understanding of our own triggers and our own internal world, it became a place where honestly we were just connected. It was like, oh, this is what's happening. I don't have the answer yet, but this I can tell it's around this thing and it's not your fault.
Yeah. That's such good communication.
Yeah.
And
then for me, goodness, this was just a crazy trip with money. I was fine when he told me that he was feeling fear about money. But then a couple days later, I snapped. And it was literally at the end of our trip. We're heading back home to Reading and we're at the airport. And Marcus decides that he's going to buy a sandwich at the airport.
How dare you?
One singular sandwich just topples the entire tower.
Those sandwiches are marked up.
Goodbye, Jenga.
You're paying $3 more than anywhere else would charge you. And he literally bought this sandwich and I could feel like my insides turn to ice as he did. And I'm all of a sudden I'm like, this guy is just spending my hard-earned money. My savings account is out the window. He's going to take everything I have and then we'll have nothing. And I had like these huge emotions well up about him and his sandwich. And so then in the airport, like Marcus could tell I was shut down. I got really quiet and really icy.
Everyone could tell.
the whole airplane. They could all tell. And it was literally the same thing where I had to own like, hey, I'm really shut down right now. You bought this sandwich. The story that feels true is that we're going to have nothing now because of your crazy sandwich buying. But I had to own this is my fear about money coming up. And I actually feel really out of control because we spent so much extra this week and I hadn't planned for it. I hadn't really budgeted. I don't know how to do this with you. And again, like I think in the moment I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if I actually like fully figured out my trigger. I mostly just communicated to him like I'm feeling a lot of fear around money.
Yes.
And luckily he had a lot of compassion because he was like, oh, that was me 3 days ago.
I get it.
I've been there.
I've been you before.
Yeah. And I think later just spent some time on my own, like journaling and trying to figure out where does this actually come from. And I realized like my whole life, well, when I was a kid, I had a sister who stole from me a lot. And so I learned at the age of like 10 that I need to hoard stuff and I need to have total control over it. If I like leave anything out there, it's going to get stolen from me.
Yes.
So literally in those moments when Marcus bought this sandwich, I had these feelings of like 10-year-old Brianna, all my money just got stolen and I don't know what's going to happen. And
the
I'm feeling
the fear, the out of control. It's not logical emotions about a sandwich. It is all of the emotions from your childhood have taken over. They're driving your car, not your logical 20-something self.
Yeah. It wasn't the feelings of, oh, my husband just bought this thing. It was the feelings of I'm being stolen from right now by this sandwich and I need to stop this. And
this is such a great example because this is what like great. Every marriage is like.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's like another form of the toilet seat, but being put on some level.
It's so true.
Never about
it's
that
sandwich.
And so for me, it was actually like going back and connecting to where that pain was actually coming from. And I don't even think I could do it in the moment. All I could do in the moment was vocalize to him, I'm really shut down. And then actually when I had the time, go back and figure out like, oh, I feel a lot of fear around money. I feel fear that it's gonna like all be gone and all be taken away from me.
Yes.
And so Marcus there, he was actually able to have compassion on that and to see like, oh, that makes sense that you're lashing out with control because you're the scared little kid who's afraid that all their money's going to get taken.
Oh, yeah.
So he could actually meet me there and have compassion. And I think I've had those triggers come out multiple times in marriage. And I've always been able to trace it back to where the fears actually come from.
Don't take her tots.
Don't take her tots.
I did not hear tots when you said that.
Well, don't take those either. These are for me. But also, no one take the tots.
What he's referring to
Is her
is that
tater tots.
I'm really possessive about food sometimes. Also because I used to get stolen from as a kid. And so foods that I really love, I have a hard time sharing them. And one time he tried to take some of this like plate of tater tots that I had and I felt so upset and I felt like this guy is trying to steal everything from me. He just took like 3 of my tots.
I can't even keep my tots.
But that is, and I don't think people understand because we feel these feelings and they feel so real.
Yeah.
And they feel so true. And it feels so definitely about the tots.
The tots for sure.
It's the tots and the sandwiches.
He is stealing from me. Like,
Yeah,
we
I
feel
have the
that
proof
so
right here.
real.
I have 3 less tots.
And I'll never get
You
them
can't
back.
count them.
And so you had to actually probably learn how to investigate what was really going on in you.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And I think, again, it's identifying, do these emotions go past the logic of the situation? Like, I even remember with the tater tots, Marcus was like, well, we can just buy you another plate of tots. And I
Do we need
emotionally
2 plates
was
of
like,
tots?
I won't fix it. Nothing will bring them back.
They're gone forever.
So obviously my emotions were not lining up with the situation. So for me,
Right.
that's a check in my spirit to be like, oh, what's going on here?
Right.
This does not logically make sense.
Yep.
That's so
Yeah.
good.
I love it. Well, this is so good. I wish that I honestly look at you guys and think this is what our first year would have looked like if we were not so screwed up.
Yeah.
Or
Instead,
if
it was
you
our.
had help.
That's
We
what
would have
our
had a counselor.
11th year of marriage looked like.
This is what I will say, though. This is how you live your life. Whatever we fought for, then we are helping people facilitate.
That's
so that
true.
they don't have to do the 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know where we'd be without you guys.
That's true.
Probably battling it out over some tots somewhere.
We wouldn't be married. That's
Yeah.
what the honest truth is. I don't think we'd be married.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's, oh, yay.
So
Naz
really,
is
it is
so
about
fun.
Appy.
Yay.
Thank you,
I do
Appy.
feel so happy. I love love so much.
But also, it's a testament to why marriage counseling in your first marriage year matters, and like personal counseling.
Yes.
So there are things where it's like we were both doing once a month marriage counseling and once a month personal stuff. So
That's great.
that created space where the sandwich thing, she could go in and process through that in her own session and work through it.
Yes.
Because then we can come together and work through marriage stuff, but then have a space where if we're in a marriage session, it comes up that I feel out of control. What do I do with that? If my only thing is once a month I get to see this person and talk about marriage stuff. So we created space where that our own stuff got worked out, as well as being together and getting more stuff worked out.
So if you're looking for a counselor, I get this request all the time. How do I find one? The thing that I use is I just use the website Psychology Today. I plug in my zip code and where I am and look, and there's specific things you can look for. If you're looking for marriage counseling, I love people who've been Gottman certified, and that's something you can see on Psychology Today. The Gottman Institute is they do marriage counseling. They have books, they have resources, and I love his ideas about marriage. He's done some incredible studies and he's widely known in this field. So I think it's great. But you want to find a counselor, and sometimes you have to date counselors if you're trying to find someone. You want to find
Not like
somebody that-
actually date them. Like she's not saying, if you want to find a counselor, go date one.
Yeah, I mean, like,
That's
you have
what
to,
I did.
You have to, you have to go a couple times to see if they're the right fit, or go
Yeah.
once and see if it's the right fit. And then if they're not, don't get discouraged. I know for me, when I found my counselor in Reading, it took me, I think I went to 3 or 4 different people. And then when I found the right one, I was like, okay, this
Yeah.
feels like the right
And there was
person.
no like It wasn't that there wasn't value in the other ones. It was just like, oh, this is specifically helpful given my circumstance. It's necessary.
And then the other thing is word of mouth is great. Once you hear of somebody who's getting great help, it's easy to find who they worked with. The thing that I recommend every couple do, and so if you are not married, your homework for this is to start to learn, what are some of my main triggers and where do they come from? Because you both had mentioned several times in this episode, you're like, oh, shame around sexuality is one of my main triggers. Fear of my needs not getting met or feeling rejected is one of my main triggers. So this is stuff you can work on and understand before you're in a relationship. You can learn how to not blame your circumstances and the people around you for what's happening. You can practice this before you even date to set yourself up for success.
Yeah, like I would say, we were both on our own process, and getting married was just combining our processes that we were on.
Yes.
Not we're doing nothing, we got married, and now it's an explosion.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You both had run after shame so much in your lives, and then so together it was like already known that would be a core value that you guys would do together. And so so if you're single, start looking at what are my main triggers and what do I need to do to go on the journey of not blaming events and people for those. If you're married, I would find something that you have blamed your partner for that is actually your own trigger. And I would go take ownership for that, which means going to your partner and saying like, hey, every time we talk about money, I get controlling with you or I get whatever. And that's actually because I'm afraid. And my fear comes from when I was a little kid feeling like there'd never be enough, or when everything fell apart and I feel this constant fear that everything's going to fall apart. So I would go to your partner, see if there's any areas that you need to apologize for blaming them for something that is about your own pain from your own story. I think that'd be a good idea.
Another idea. Oh,
yeah, go ahead.
I just thought another idea, and this is something that I have a huge value for, is a lot of us, when we trigger, our first thought is they want to go to blame. I want you to think, when you trigger, I want you to sit for a second and ask yourself, what am I feeling and where is this actually coming from? So instead of trying to get out of the trigger and fix the situation, I want you to get comfortable in feeling it. Okay, I'm feeling this emotion. What am I actually feeling and where is it coming from? Because then you can start addressing the real issue instead of just the circumstance.
Yeah, that's really good.
It's great. It's great.
And if you are engaged and looking to get married, I really, really suggest choosing marriage counseling for the beginning. The last thing I want to say about a counselor is find a counselor that is going on this journey where they're not just saying that the other person is the reason that you feel everything. You want a counselor that is empowering you, that is actually like, okay, but what is your issue? What can you take ownership for? What do you need to go on the journey of healing for? You don't want to find a counselor that is blaming either, because that won't help anybody.
No. Well, you are the reason that we've gone over in time.
I know. I'm so sorry.
And that's just truth right there.
Is that blame or is that truth?
That's just truth right there. Hey, thank you two for being on here today. We love you both. We had so much fun. And if you guys got anything out of this, anything whatsoever, rate, review, subscribe, and share the pants off of this episode. We want to see healthy marriages, healthy people,
healthy relationships,
people being able to connect and take ownership. And of course, if you go shove this in your spouse's face or your partner's face,
listen together and then apologize, and then they'll think it's a good idea to listen.
Yeah. And apologize for just shoving it in their face because they're to blame for all your problems.
Wait, I have one last thing. If you want to figure out your triggers and you want to understand your pain and you want to get healing so that your spouse doesn't trigger you as much, we created the Father series. It will actually help you map out your triggers and your life and the emotional river of pain that I said that's underneath the surface. It'll help you get rid of things being able to hook you. You can go to justinandabby.com/shop.
All right. Goodbye.
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 Bye-bye.